Hello, this is Eric Townsend with the Law Eagles. This is the mobile and business tech page. Thank you for watching the show. Today I have Justin Issac on the show. He's with the Lawyer in Blue Jeans, and he's going to be discussing how his business is operating remotely, how they're still obtaining clients even during the downturn, and he's going to be describing a little bit about the importance of estate plans, especially with what we're going through today with the coronavirus and this pandemic that we're in and the shutdown. So we're going to have some really good information for you. So please sit tight and we're going to jump into this. Justin, thank you for being here today. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I wanted to ask you to explain your business a little bit. Tell the audience what you do.
Sure. We're an estate planning law firm based in Old Town, and we focus mainly on trust administration, and probates. We don't like to do probates. We prefer to create trust for people. And a trust essentially is a mechanism that you would use to help avoid the probate court for your family. So if you were to pass away, you can pass along your assets without having to worry about it going through the courts, which during a time like this is the last thing someone's going to want to think about as someone passes away. And we really just counsel people and help people create their estate plan so as to avoid that whole court process.
That makes sense. You were just describing a couple of things before we jumped onto this interview. You had actually mentioned some of the instruments people need to make sure that they're protected during times like this, where if something happens. Can you describe those?
Yeah, of course. So there's a couple different things that people need to have in place. And this is without question, no matter what your status or what kind of assets you have. If you don't have a power of attorney for finance or an advanced healthcare directive in place, also known as a living will sometimes, you need to have those. Because if you're married, just because you're married doesn't mean your spouse can make decisions for you. On top of that, they can't necessarily just go sign your name on your behalf either. So you need to have these documents in place to make sure that your spouse is protected, that you're protected in case of emergency or in case of incapacity. And one thing a lot of people don't think about too is that your kids, they might be over 18, and a lot of kids have returned home from college because of this whole coronavirus. But what happens if something happens to your kids and they can't sign their name or they're incapacitated? Well, you cannot act on their behalf just because they're your children. If they're over 18, they need to have a power of attorney as well and an advanced healthcare directive as well. You need something on paper that says who can act on your behalf, because the government, they won't just accept the word of, oh, I'm their mom, I'm going to sign their checks, or I'm going to pay their bills. It's not how it works. So you need to have those two documents in place at bare minimum.
Gotcha. I would have never even thought of that, to worry about, adult children.
Yeah. And one thing that, we've seen throughout the years is what we recommend is a lot based on the stories that we've encountered. I met a person a while back where his son was up at like the University of Colorado or something like that. And he was 19 years old, and he had a terrible accident at a house party or a frat party. And he went into a temporary coma. And the dad went up to Colorado and he's trying to make decisions. He's trying to do things on his son's behalf, but they wouldn't let him because there was no power of attorney in place, and he's an adult. So he's got to have something that says my dad can do this. So it took him about 4 months to get in front of a judge and get a conservatorship appointed. And the cost of that is just astronomical compared to having a power of attorney made or a healthcare directive made. Usually a conservatorship in San Diego is about $7,500. So compare that to the cost of like a power of attorney, which could be, $300-400. It's just night and day. So needs to be in place.
Absolutely. And that's just a conservatorship for the person. That's not even necessarily for the estate if the child has a large estate.
Yeah, it really depends. But yes, that's correct. It's usually just for the person and making decisions in that capacity. It depends on the situation. Of course, that's a typical lawyer answer. But yeah, it's a pretty lengthy process too. And in San Diego, where the probate court is so backed up, and they're going to be so much further backed up with this whole situation because court is closed. Everything is closed right now. We can't go to court, and we have pending probates that we've had. The calendar dates just got pushed on because we have no idea when they're going to open back up. So
yeah, not only that, but then the courts are going to have to figure out how to reschedule everything, and that's going to take another couple months. It's going to be a nightmare.
who gets priority. And right now, on average, we're looking about 2 years for a probate. So we're going to probably add another year on average for a while, I think.
That's awful.
Yeah.
And all just having one simple estate plan and you'd be set.
You're exempted from it. Yeah. You don't have to worry about it. And that's why it's such a powerful tool. People don't know about it. The common vernacular you'll hear in the news or in the newspaper is, I need to get my will together. I need to update my will. Well, a lot of people don't know that a will still send you to court. The only way to get out of court or out of the probate court is with the trust.
That's a funny play on words. A will send you to court.
Yeah. It's an unfortunate play on words.
It is for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I went to your webinar Tuesday night, and I thought it was fantastic. I heard all this information on there. Really good info. I liked, you guys said some really great stuff. I thought it was great that you were doing it, because I had gone to one of your guys' seminars years ago. And it was a long time ago, but it was at a location. It was, it was a physical location. Yeah, this one was online. So describe a little bit about how that's working for you. The audience includes other attorneys that are out there, so they could probably use that information.
Yeah, so we had a very mixed audience. We had a pretty good showing too, and we've also managed to send out the webinar to anyone who wasn't able to make it at that actual time too. We had some title people on there. Some realtors told me they were on the call too, just to get more information. Essentially, the seminar, the webinar, it's really just information about why you need an estate plan. One of the things that we say is that there's 3 ways, or there's 3 reasons that you might need a trust. One of them is if you have minor children, you probably need an estate plan, or you do. If you have more than $166,000 in total assets, you need a trust. And 3, if you have property, real property, even a vacant lot to your name, you're going to need a trust, because you can't transfer real estate or real property without a trust, unless it goes through probate first, right? So a joint tenancy is something we talked about a little bit before our call here, and it's something we talk about in the seminar too. That a lot of people think that joint tenancy will totally avoid probate, and it does usually, but temporarily. It is not a long-term solution, because when the second person passes away, it's going to go to probate. And so a lot of people think, well, there's a way around this. What I'll do is I'll just put my kids on as a co-owner. They're going to be on title to the house. And usually what that's going to do is it's going to ruin your step up in cost basis. So your capital gains that you're going to owe, when you put the kids on there, you can't have it in a trust. So you're going to owe on capital gains. And one of the reasons people get a trust is they want to avoid having to pay that 20% of their capital gains to Uncle Sam. And when you have a trust, it's completely exempted. On top of that, another reason why it's not a good idea to put your children on your property is that if your child gets in a car accident and they get sued, the person who's suing your child will also attach the house that they're a co-owner of, and then they could take the house as a part of that lawsuit. So
absolutely.
There's a lot of ways that people try and get around it, but really just having that document in place is such a great and powerful tool. And there's so many benefits to it that it took almost an hour to explain, most of the benefits. That's not even all of the benefits, because there's more things that the trust can do. But really your goal being to keep everything private, keep it out of the courts, saves money, because a typical probate can be pretty costly.
Like, how much would you say? Like, if the average house in San Diego, I think it's like 500,000 to 600,000, somewhere in there. Yeah. Like, what would a probate? If someone had that house, and let's say, just to add another layer onto it, let's say they have a mortgage of $450,000 on that house, and it's a $500,000 house.
Okay, so a mortgage of $450,000 and your value's at $500,000, so the equity is pretty small. You only have $50,000 in equity. We'll just say that.
Yeah.
The court is not going to value your fees for your probate based on your equity. It's based on the gross, which is gross. It is not very fair. And on a typical $500,000 to $600,000, I think a $600,000 estate, your attorney fees, executive fees can be around $30,000. But not just that. You're also looking at 2 years in the probate system, if not longer. And so all the assets are frozen. No one can touch anything. Nothing can be sold. And that becomes a major problem, especially when you have kids. When there's no plan in place too, you get a lot of kids who start to fight. oh, mom said I get this, and mom said I get that, and I'm supposed to get 75%. Well, you know what? Tough. The court's going to decide because you don't have a trust in place. And in a situation that we've been in, we had a probate where the executor passed away in the middle of the probate. And
Wow.
we couldn't sell the house at that point because there's no person who has any power. And so the house was getting broken into, and we couldn't do anything about it. We couldn't sell the house because we had no executor. And it took 9 months to get a new executor appointed. 9 months.
Wow.
So it's not a great system, but there is a way around it. And that's why we try and harp on people. So yeah, the webinar the other day was our first basically go at that. And I think it went pretty well, and it was pretty well received. It's a lot of good information that we're just trying to get out to people. And we are not of the opinion that we're the best and the only, we just want you to know this information. And, if people want to use us, we're happy to help. But there's good estate planners out there. The main thing is just avoiding the probate process. And that's all we care about, because we've seen how bad it is. And we're just trying to get the word out there. There's another way.
Definitely. Yeah. And what you were talking about just now with the value of the home, and if you have a mortgage on it, if half of the equity goes away because you didn't have an estate plan, that's terrible for one.
Yeah.
What's also terrible is you got a family that's sitting there, kids that are sitting there trying to handle the death of their family member. And now, all the money that they need for burial expenses and everything else, they're going to have to dig out of their own pockets to take care of those things, do those things. And I think a lot of people wouldn't want that. They'd want to make sure that their kids are taken care of. So
yeah. You want to exempt your kids from having to worry about this whole process. And we talk about the last thing that people want after a death is to have to deal with the courts for 2 years.
Right.
I say in the webinar too, people say, well, what's probate court like? What is this ride going to be like? And I say, well, it's like going to the DMV for 2 years straight. And so if you want to avoid that for your kids, you should probably have an estate plan. So
2-year DMV visit. Sweet.
Yeah.
Thanks,
exactly.
Mom. Thanks, Dad. Yeah, that sucks. That's reality, right?
Yep. It's true.
So one of the other questions, thank you for going through all of that. I really appreciate that. That's some good info for the audience. What are some, because of everything that we're going through, there's people that are working from home. A lot of people working from home have to work from home.
Yeah.
And so I think that was the situation for you. You had mentioned something about your employees being more productive than ever.
Yeah.
Because of this. But I wanted to know, what are some of the benefits and what are some of the negatives to working remotely?
So when you deal with estate planning, you tend to deal with a little bit of an elderly crowd, and they're not necessarily great when it comes to email or Zoom conferences. And so we tend to meet a lot face to face, and people like that. That's kind of the way things have always been. And they feel more comfortable when you're talking to someone face to face about your estate plan, because they want to make sure this is done right, and we do too. So we tend to be busy in office. We'll have a lot of clients coming in on a daily basis. And so we're, pretty high traffic. And the downside would be that, when it comes to the staff being more productive, that's mainly because they don't have to deal with phone calls or people coming in all the time. And so they're able to, do their work a little bit more remote and a little bit more convenient and comfortable, and they don't have to drive into the office and traffic and all that. So what we've done is that we're essential, we're quasi-essential. And it's a weird field. We're like in this small kind of like gray area, because the way we're looking at it is, if you were to pass away during this corona pandemic, the probate court doesn't care about the virus. They care, did you have your estate plan in place? Did you have a trust in place? If you didn't, we're going to probate court. And so we've had a lot of people who want to get it done and get things done quick. So the only time we're really going into the office is to sign documents, but we're wearing gloves and masks and sanitizing, after each client, before each client. We've had our carpets cleaned once. We're going to have them cleaned again tomorrow. We're taking all the steps we can to make sure everyone's protected, that we're protected. And so it's a very unique time. We just want to make sure we get as many people to sign their trust as possible and protect their estates and their families, and, get those healthcare directives in place in case something comes up. So it's definitely a unique time, and we've had to adjust. But, you know, for the people who are in the middle stage of their estate plan, which would be just reviewing the draft of their trust or just talking about a trust in general, we've done a lot of phone appointments. We've done some Zoom appointments for the younger generation who's a little bit more apt with it, with the technology. So we're pretty adjustable. And I think most businesses should be, because people are at home. And so we need to get them content like we're doing right now or with the webinar. And it is going to them instead of them coming to us. So you have to be able to adjust accordingly, and the main thing is communication. When you have a staff of, what do we have? Eight people in the office, or 8 employees total. We're on Slack all the time. We have an ongoing office Slack where it's a messaging system. If anyone doesn't know what that is, we're able to communicate. Hey, who's done this? Does anyone know about this? Who called this person? Just making sure we're all staying in communication. Since we're not face to face, I can't walk down the hall and just say, "Hey, did you do this?" I have to go to Slack and say, "Hey, did you do this?" You know, so.
How much does Slack cost?
That's free.
It's free, right? Yeah, it's a great. I don't know why more people don't use Slack if they don't have a system set up.
Yeah.
Because I mean, honestly, if you want to set tasks and do other things, I've seen Slack. I've got it in an attorney software system that I use for my stuff. But I've seen Slack in you know, the process, and it works great.
It is. It is pretty. It's pretty good, and there's more to utilize that we don't even really know about. But for what we needed, just for messaging, it's pretty good. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm going to put up some information real quick. I'm going to put up my information and your information so people at home can see it. So I had talked to you. I was talking to you before the meeting as well about the discount that you had given your clients for going and attending the webinar on Tuesday night. You were giving them a 3-day period where they could do it. And you agreed for my audience, anybody that, you know, is watching the show, they can email you at justin@lawyerin.bluejeans.com, mention that they saw this presentation and the Law Eagle discount, and that you would give them the same discount, which is basically, normally it's $4,500 for the estate plan, but you're giving a $2,000 discount if they do it, and you would keep that open until April 6th, correct?
Yeah, and for for someone who isn't married, the estate plan cost usually is $3,500, and we take $1,500 off. So for a married, $2,500; for a single, $2,000. We like flat rates too. A lot of attorneys charge hourly fees, as I'm sure you know, and most people know. We like to stay away from that too, because we don't want people to be hesitant to ask questions. We need to make sure that we don't miss anything. So we like the flat fee model. You don't have to worry about it. It's all up front. And also the way our policy works too is that if you have questions at a later date, 10, 15, 20 years from now, that's included too. We don't charge for that. We want you to be able to contact us. We want to be there to be a resource for you when it comes to your estate plan.
That's awesome. That's great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. You know, I'm sure some of the people watching, they have your contact information now. If they have any questions, you've been really open the whole time I've been discussing this with you. So if people have questions about this or anything, I'm sure you'd be open to fielding those calls, right?
Yeah, feel free to give us a call or send me an email. I mean, we're not always in the office nowadays, usually just for a few hours in the morning if we have some client appointments. But my email is going with me everywhere, as most people, you know, you have your phone with you at all times too. So I'm constantly answering emails, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Or if you just want me to look at your trust, I'm happy to do that and make sure it's up to date. And those consultations are always free. And we can always quote you as far as, you know, if you need to make changes or want to make changes, and we can talk about it from there.
Awesome. And this is also going to be posted on social media. So if anybody has questions, they can also post below in the questions, or if you want to send a private message. If it's a question directed towards Justin and it's on one of my social medias, I'll forward it to him along with your contact information and make sure he gets that. So cool. Well, Justin, thanks again for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Thank you very much for having me, and make sure everyone, you plan your estate, protect your estate.
Absolutely. I second that. You definitely need to do that if you don't have it set up now.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, thank you, Justin. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe.
All right. Thank you. You as well.